Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to Talk a Lot Tackle. In this episode, we're going to be talking about some yellowtail recommendations in terms of techniques. In this video, we'll cover stick baits, surface irons, yo-yo irons, trolling techniques, and also fly lining, and then also some live bait type scenarios. We'll also cover some rod and reel recommendations that I personally really like and want to fish. Obviously, I don't have those with me right now, but that's just what I'm going to recommend for you guys when I talk about it in this video. I don't have any rods with me right now because they're all downstairs, but we will get into that later in the video. And just to start off, this is going to be SoCal yellowtail fishing on patties, at the islands, near the coast, pretty much anywhere off our Southern California coast that you could think of. There will be yellowtail. So I love fishing yellowtail. It is a really fun way. These are all fun ways to fish them. I personally like fishing them on the fly line, just because it's a little bit more hands-on and it's like you expect that bite to happen any moment. Surface iron fishing, it's going to be a little bit different. You're winding that jig in non-stop, you're casting, winding, and then you don't expect that bite. You just all of a sudden feel it and gotta wind on it. So the first technique I'm going to talk about is my one of my personal favorites for yellowtail is going to be the surface iron. Surface iron fishing could be meant for calico bass on the surface. It's great for barracuda, bonita, yellowtail, and even boiling bluefin. So it covers pretty much a wide range of fish, but specifically today we're going to talk about the yellowtail scenario. So I personally have some of my favorite jigs in my box that I carry, and the first one, I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but it's a great swimming jig. It's going to be a Tatty C in the white and mint color. The mint is going to be on the hips, the white is going to be on the top, with a big, nice, solid treble hook and some solid rings. This is going to be a painted jig, so it's going to be your regular surface iron jig, just painted on. I personally have stopped fishing these kind of jigs. I still fish them. I still fish the ones that I have here, but I've personally stopped buying them, I should say. For a specific reason I'll talk to you guys about in a little bit, but I like this Tatty C. It's a great swimming jig, got nice pointed ends to it, cuts through the water very well, and it's just a smaller profile. So it's going to be a smaller profile, it's going to be a smaller jig, which means it's going to be great for your bass, barracuda, smaller yellowtail, or if the fish are feeding on smaller baits and you want to present a smaller bait to them or lure, this is what I would go for, a Tatty C. And I'll even explain to you guys after I talk about these jigs how to pick out the right jig for your tackle box and for your fishing needs. The next one, it's going to be a bigger jig. It's going to be the Tatty Lures Starman 112. This was the very first surface iron that I got. It wasn't the same, this exact one. It was a different one that I have in another tackle box over there. But it is one of the best swimming Tatty Starman 112s or surface irons I've ever owned for one of these kind of jigs. It was the first one I ever owned, and the way it swam in the water was just amazing. I really enjoyed fishing it. I've caught bass, barracuda, no yellowtail on it, but those are the only two species I've caught on it, but I still gotta catch a yellowtail on it. It's gonna be a lot of fun when I do. So this is gonna be your bigger bait. It's gonna have a little bit of a wider nose on the tip on both ends. This end is gonna be notched, and I'm not 100% sure why it's notched like that, but it's just how they make them. But this is just going to be a solid mint colored jig for you guys. Next one is gonna be this one my dad bought, just kind of as an impulse buy because we were going for bluefin not that long ago, and he didn't have any surface irons that he wanted to fish, so he got this one. This is gonna be a Kicker 25 light, and it's gonna have like a silver metallic with like kind of a rainbow reflection on it, like kind of a scale pattern with blue mint hips. This one is gonna have two rounded noses on the ends with solid rings and a good sized treble hook. I think, if I'm right, yeah, I'm gonna compare these two hooks. This is gonna be the Kicker ones are gonna be your thinner wired hooks. This is gonna be your larger gauged hooks. They're gonna be a lot stronger, but they're gonna pretty much be the same size hook all across the board for these surface irons. This Kicker, it swims pretty good. Not that bad of a jig right off the shelf. When my dad picked it out, I don't think he really looked for the offset hips and whatnot and eyes. I'll talk about that whole thing later on, but I was impressed with how it swam when I first threw it on my dad's setup. But next one is gonna be your Tatty Senior 4.0. This is gonna be still a surface iron. It's just gonna be a really fat surface iron. It's gonna be very like thick. You can see how thick that is. It's gonna have a flat, you could see the flatness right there. And then it's gonna curve off and be smooth all the way around. It's gonna have your rounded off nose and rounded off tail. It's gonna have solid rings on both ends with a nice solid hook. And I think this hook, if I'm correct, is pretty much the same gauged hook as the Starman 112 because obviously it is a Tatty lure, so Tatty I think uses the same hooks all across the board. They don't change it up. But this is going to be your heavier surface iron. If I compare the two, I would say they're pretty much the same, but if you really wanted a jig that casts far in windy conditions, I'd probably go with something like this, or even maybe a lower profile jig that's bigger, just so you could sling it out there. And also if you wanted to get it out there farther for fish that are feeding on top but you can't reach because they're being really finicky, throw something like this or a Starman 112. It's going to be that mint colored. As you might notice, pretty much all these jigs that I have right here have mint color on them. And that's just a really popular first pick color that a lot of guys fish. And I really like it too. I don't know what bait out there is mint colored, but it just seems like it gets bit really, really hard and really, really well. So this one's gonna, like I said, have a thicker profile. See, I'm not sure if it's not gonna have a wider profile. It's gonna be the same as the 112, but it's still a really good jig, and I like the way it swims. And for these surface irons, they range anywhere from $12 to $14 per lure, depending on the brand. Some brands are a little bit cheaper at like $10 or $9, but specifically for these, I think it's 12 to 14 is what the range are. And then the Kickers, I'm not 100% on the Kickers because I personally don't fish Kicker, for a specific reason I'll talk about later. But I do like the Tatties, and as you can see, all three are Tatties for the mint and white colored jigs. So the next thing we're going to talk about is yo-yos. Before I forget, I'm going to talk about how you fish these jigs, and what to look for when you pick out a surface iron. So in terms of picking out a surface iron, when you go on the rack, you're going to see that they have any tackle store that carries surface irons in Southern California is going to have a big wall with just these lined up on the wall on racks. And you'll see one rack has the same lure 10 different times um, in the same color or in different colors depending on what you see and what they have available. But when you look at that specific lure in that specific color, don't just pick the first one in the front of the row and think it's going to be a great lure, because they're all made a little bit different. Um, they are molded a little bit different every time and they come out different every time. So when I go to the tackle store to pick out a jig, obviously for the jigs that I fish nowadays, I won't ever have to do that because I know they all swim the same and they're all made pretty much the same. But for these, when you're fishing these that are like Tatty, um, Kicker, I forget some of the other brands. Yeah, the Salas 6X's and whatnot, those kind of brands. Definitely look for this and pick it out. You're gonna want to look for an offset eyelet right here. As you can see, it's not centered. It's a little bit off to your right. Um, on this one, same thing. It's off to your left. So it's not going to be perfectly aligned. One's going to be off this way and the other one's going to be off this way. And that's going to really make the swimming action on these jigs a lot better than if they were all perfect and synchronized. And then for the hips, just try to pick a jig with one hip here that's really pointy and the other hip somewhere below it, so they're off centered and they're not like this, because if they're like this, they're not going to swim that well. If they're off center, they're going to swim a lot better, just because they're going to be kicking a lot better in the water. And then obviously you won't be able to test the jig out right there in the shop, but just look for those. Some guys do this whole spinning the jig type thing, and I don't know what that does. It's everybody picks their jig their own way, but that's how I've learned to pick it, and it's shown great results for me. And when you buy one and want to fish it, just make sure it's got great swimming action. Make sure it does a few small kicks and then it kicks wide. So it's going to be pretty much kick, 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 and then continue back onto that pattern. It'll make a few small kicks and then it'll kick out really wide and come back to its track. So that's how you'll want to fish these jigs. And that's just a little bit about surface iron fishing, picking the right jigs, how to pick them, and what colors I recommend. I recommend the blue, meaning the mint colored jigs, the white and mint, silver and mint, and then there's also like scrambled egg. You could get the bleeding sardine, you could get sardine colored patterns, scrambled egg, blue and white, which I'll show you later on, but those are just the generic colors right there that I like to pick. Moving on to another somewhat similar to surface iron is going to be your yo-yo jigs. And these are just some of the jigs right here that I have in my tackle box. And there are 3 different colors and 2 different brands. One's going to be, 2 of them are going to be a Tatty, the other one are going to be Salas 6X Junior. This is going to be a lot smaller of a jig, and it's going to be a lot heavier. That's where you get the name yo-yo from. As you can see, they're completely different. For these, I would still look for that offset eye on both ends. Make sure they're both on opposite ends, offset hips, and just make sure it's obviously the heavier one, so it's going to be that yo-yo one. They have different sizes. This is going to be just the smaller size. It's going to be in that blue and white color, the blue hips, the white body on top. Same hooks. I think these are going to be a little bit of a thinner gauged hook than the surface iron ones from what I'm seeing, but they're still going to be strong, great hooks. Another thing is, when you're fishing these, you're going to be fishing them vertically. You can cast them out a little bit and let them sink, or you can even fish them on boiling bluefin or whatnot. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but when you're fishing these, tie your line straight to this ring, with whichever knot you like to tie. I personally like to tie the San Diego Jam knot. It just seems strong and clean for me, and turns out great every time. You're gonna let this sink all the way down to where the fish are, maybe 10 feet past, and then you're just gonna hammer down on that reel and crank your life away. It's pretty much speed jigging, but literally no action, but you just winding that lure in super fast, and the lure does all the action. It just kind of darts up, back and forth, but vertically instead of horizontally on the surface like a surface iron would do. And this just kind of mimics a fleeing fish from the yellowtail when you go fish these on kelp patties where there's yellowtail deep down and you're not seeing them 10 or 5 feet below the surface. So that's how you fish these. They come in all different sizes and colors and a bunch of different brands. This one is a Tatty BA. This other one is going to be Salis 6X Junior in the scrambled egg color. The white on top, the yellow on part of the hip, and then the brown on the very edge. This one has a little bit of a longer shanked treble hook. I'm not sure why. That's just what they chose and how it came out. But it's going to be that same kind of profile. A little bit more slender and rounded, but it's going to be pretty much the same as the Tatty BA. This one is going to be another Tatty BA, so it's going to be pretty much the same as that other Tatty BA I just talked about, but just a different color. This is going to be called, I'm not even sure what this color is called, I forget, but it's just going to be white, yellow, yellow, green, and green on the very end of the hips. So when you fish these yo-yo irons, I'll talk about the recommended rods for these lures. So those are your two techniques out of the way so far that a lot of guys fish when they fish yellowtail. The next common technique could be or will be your stick bait. There's a lot of brands out there that make stick baits that are great for yellowtail: Nomad, Shimano, Yozuri. I'm probably blanking out on another couple brands, but I have two right here. This is going to be your Shimano Cold Sniper Jerk 170F. It's got a bill on it, so I'm not sure how many feet this thing dives down, but it dives down a decent way. The stock hooks on these things, I would not fish straight out of the box. I personally did because I didn't have any aftermarket hooks to put on this thing. You probably could get away with the stocked split rings on here, or you could upgrade them depending on what you like and how strong they are. But this is going to be called that white and pink colored jerkbait. It is a lot bigger of a jerkbait. It's going to be mimicking those larger sardines that you're going to be fishing for when you fish the yellowtail and bluefin and whatnot. You could use this on a smaller setup with lighter line for casting on bluefin boils, casting at bonita, and especially yellowtail when they're busting on the surface and you know they're a few feet below the surface, and also for calico bass. That's another great option. But I personally would recommend adding some modifications to this, meaning changing the hooks to stronger treble hooks. Shimano makes a lot of great ones, BKK and Mustad, and Mustad, Owner, and BKK. So that is just your basic Shimano jerkbait 170F that they have. They have it in different colors. You could do the sardine colors, you could do the white and pink, bleeding sardine, mackerel, whichever like one you like the best. Obviously, the color doesn't really do anything besides add a little bit of flash in the water. It's mainly to catch the fisherman, not the fish. The action is what catches the fish. So that's your jerkbait, um, or your lipped jerkbait. This is going to be your lipless jerkbait right here. And this one, this one's heavier than this one, I believe, even though it's shorter. But it's also going to be a Shimano. So I just recently got this a few days ago, and it's the Shimano Stick 140S. So I believe it's like 3.5 ounces for this thing, and it's got a great profile. It's gonna have that curve, and then it's gonna dip down into like a narrow tail. It's got some great stock split rings, but some really thin wired hooks, treble hooks. I'm planning on eventually switching these out to thicker gauge treble hooks, stronger gauge treble hooks from Owner. Probably going to change out the split rings, but we'll see how these handle for right now. Um, if you go for yellowtail, I don't think you really need to change these because they're not going to be fighting as hard as a bluefin would. But if you're using this for bluefin applications, definitely change out those treble hooks because they will bend out after a long fight from a bluefin. And then this has a unique design in it where it's got a spring inside with some lead. That whole thing right there is all lead. So that's a couple ounces or a few ounces of lead right there. Like I said, probably 3.5 ounces is what I remember it's being. But as you can, it doesn't make any noise. You just hear that weight inside moving back and forth because it's not solid. It's going to be clear on the bottom. It's going to be that bleeding mackerel pattern, the mackerel on top with the blood streaks going down the side and the silver on towards the belly with some eyes. The silver is what's really going to give it that flash, as you guys can see right there. It's really flashy in the water. It is going to have this interesting scoop, spoon-shaped thing right here, as you can see. And I think that's just to add a little bit of jump to the lure and kind of add some splash in the water and make some bubbles. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't really seen how this thing swims, so I'm going to test it out probably in a few days or maybe this upcoming weekend when I go for bluefin at San Clemente Island. I'll throw this guy on my Trank setup, but it's a great lure. Shimano makes some amazing lures, and I'm very happy with the results on these things. So it is going to have a smaller, I would say, split ring on right here. I personally don't really like fishing these split rings on these lures because, as you could see, where the split rings end, you can't really see it there because I can't get that close. Where the split rings end, if you tie a knot on the other opposite side of it, eventually it is going to make its way over to those ends, and it could cause chafing or possibly slip out and whatnot and affect the action of the lure. So what I'm probably gonna do is take off the split ring and fish it straight to this eyelet right here, just so it has a little bit of a better connection and also better action. I could always tie a loop knot or even add my snap swivel on here. But that's your two jerk baits right there. And then another option you guys can do is trolling for yellowtail. When you troll for yellowtail, I don't troll for yellowtail because we mainly troll for bluefin instead of yellowtail, and we don't target yellowtail as much as we do bluefin unless we're fishing patties and inshore islands and stuff. So when you troll for yellowtail, you guys are going to want to fish like a crankbait style bait, like the Nomad DTX minnows. I'm not sure the sizes because I'm not on their website right now, so I can't really get the sizes for you right now. But fish their DTX minnows. You could fish a Rapala X-Wrap or something like that. One of the Rapalas, anything with a lip on the end of it, like this jerkbait. Don't fish something like that. Don't troll something like this because it's not going to be as effective. Troll a bigger lure that covers a lot more ground and dives, covers a lot more water and dives down deeper into the water column. So those are your three or four basic techniques for fishing yellowtail. And now I'm going to talk about getting your rod and reel situations. So, actually, before I do that, I'm going to talk about live bait fishing for yellowtail and what hooks and line I recommend for fishing yellowtail when you're at the islands or on kelp patties or whatnot. So let me just put away these and let's get into the rigs or hooks and stuff. So when you're fishing yellowtail on the fly line, you're gonna want a smaller sized hook. I don't know the sizes right now because I don't have a box of hooks with the numbers on them, but anything in this size right here, you're gonna want to fish. This is kind of like a rusty hook, so it's kind of brown, but I have pretty much the same size, but just, if I could get it off, but just in a silver colored, and then also some ringed hooks. I personally like fishing owner. I will always fish owner and nothing else. I just really trust owner and I like what they make and their hooks and products and stuff. So this is one of owner's ringed hooks. So you could see right there on the bottom, it's got a ring. And the reason why is because it allows the bait to swim freely and give it a lot better action. There's no resistance on that bait. This is going to be an offset hook. As you could see, let me get this right for you guys. As you can see, when I line it up right there, you could see that that tip is pointed to one direction a little bit. And that's why they call it an offset. And I'm not 100% sure why that is and what the cause of that is and what the pros and cons of it are. But that's just one of the hooks that owner makes available for you guys to choose from. So that's one of the hooks I have. I really like fishing these hooks. It seems like they give off great action and make the live bait swim more naturally. You've also got, if you notice the fish are a lot bigger and you're fishing a little bit of a bigger sardine, you could fish a thicker gauge hook, a bigger hook, and fish specifically J hooks. I don't really like fishing circle hooks for yellowtail, only for bluefin, but we'll talk about that later too. So this is going to be your thicker hook, thicker gauge, and also a bigger hook. That's going to be mainly for like bigger, like 7 to 8 inch sardines with some mackerel involved too. Same thing here, but I think it's just a little bit of a thinner gauge and stuff like that. So fish the smaller hooks to medium-sized hooks. If I had a chart in front of me or knew what sizes these were, I would recommend them to you, but I don't know my hook sizes very well, so I can't really recommend that. But those are your few techniques for fishing yellowtail. And now we are going to get into the rod and reel setups along with the line recommendations. So let me put these aside. And when I fish yellowtail, when I'm fishing surface iron, I use a 9-foot jig stick. When I fish the yo-yo, I use a 7-foot stout heavy action rod. When I fish my stick baits and crank lipped baits, I use a probably like a medium heavy to medium action 9-foot rod, maybe even an 8-foot rod, but I like my 9-foot rods rather than my 8-foot rods. But that's what I'm fishing for rod lengths. And then for line, I will fish 40-pound mono, sometimes 50-pound mono, but I won't fish anything heavier than 50 and nothing less than 30-pound mono for yellowtail. When I am fishing yellowtail on the surface iron, where I'm involving a jig stick with a bigger reel, I will spool that thing up with 65-pound braid. Sometimes it will be 80 depending on what kind of structure I'm fishing. If I'm fishing near the kelp or I know the fish are going to be a lot bigger and I'm fishing above structure where they could dive down and get me into the rocks, I'll fish 80-pound braid. So I'm fishing 65-pound Power Pro Max Quattro, and I'm spooling that reel up with enough line to where I have where I could put 100 yards of my 40 to 50-pound mono top shot on top. I like the Power Pro Max Quattro compared to its regular Power Pro braid 65-pound because it's going to be a thinner diameter, which means I'm going to be able to get a lot more line on the reel compared to when I'm fishing their regular Power Pro braid. The Max Quattro, since it's going to be a thinner diameter, it's going to be less abrasion resistant compared to the regular because it's going to be that thinner diameter. It's going to be able to be cut in half really easily and chafed if you get into the kelp or the rocks and whatnot. So you're fishing anywhere from 65 to 80-pound Power Pro or braid on your jig sticks. When I'm fishing my stick baits, I will fish, or actually what I should say is when I'm fishing my jig sticks, 65 to 80-pound braid, and then I leave enough room to add a 100 yards, 100 to 50 yard, 75 to 100 yards of my 40 to 50-pound mono. And I specifically fish Iser line. This is going to be your first string mono, but I really like the triple X. It's going to be your more expensive line, but either of these are really good. I just really like the triple X because it's going to be a lot stronger than the regular first string. So I got my 40-pound spool of 370 yards, and then I got their 50-pound test of their 500-yard spool. So I have those two, and then I also have their 30-pound test, 450 yards. So those are your first three. And then after that, I will tie my mono top shot to a quick release clip to my surface iron. Otherwise, I could, if I don't use that clip, I could always just tie a San Diego jam knot straight to the lure with my mono. After that, I'm ready to fish that setup. Your next setup is going to be your stick bait setup. Your stick bait setup is going to be anywhere from an 8 to 9 foot medium heavy to medium rod. You can fish that on a Tranx 400, a bait casting type reel, or even a conventional reel, depending on what size it is. I would go with a smaller, narrower size reel, but I fish my stick bait setup on a what used to be a 9-foot rod, and now it's like an 8.6 or an 8-foot rod. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't measured it, but I fish that rod with a Tranx 400. I've got it spooled up with 30-pound Power Pro braid. I am going to eventually switch that out to 40 or 50-pound braid because I think the 30-pound braid is too thin and too weak for my applications and my likings. And then on top of that, I do like fishing the 30-pound mono top shot on that. But at the same time, I don't. So what I'm going to probably do is, instead of adding like 50 yards or 30 yards of the 30-pound mono, I'm probably just going to add my fluorocarbon leader straight to my braid, and I won't fish that 50 or 30 yard 30-pound mono top shot because I just think it takes up too much space on that reel and doesn't give me that line capacity, and I just think it's too much. So that's just my personal preference. You guys can do whatever you want. You guys can follow these techniques and likings from this video and apply it to yourself, but that's just what I recommend. When I'm fishing my stick bait combo, I'll add 40 or 50 pound braid on, and then probably add my 30-pound mono top shot. If I'm fishing a Tranx 400, I'm not going to go 40 because 40 is just overkill. I'm going to go my 30. That's just what I found best for that reel. And then on top of that, just fish that straight jerk bait or stick bait or whatnot. I don't add a fluorocarbon leader because it's not necessary. You're not fishing a live bait where it's a little bit more finesse. But that's for your jig stick and your stick bait combo. Next, I'm going to talk about my fly line setup. So my fly line setup is going to be a 8-foot, or even what I have right now is a 7-foot custom-made rod on a Avit MXL 6.4 Gold. That reel has 65-pound Power Pro Max Quattro on it, in green or mossy green, and then on top has 100 yards of 40-pound mono. It's not the Iserline, it's some other brand, I forget, because they didn't. It's because they didn't have Iserline in the shop for them to put on, so I went with whatever they had. And it is a blue colored mono, so it doesn't do anything in the water. It just kind of blends in with the color of the water and whatnot. So that's what I'll do is if I'm fishing my Avit MXL, I'll have 65-pound Power Pro Max Quattro on there, leave enough room for 100 yards of my 40-pound mono. And then on top of that, I go like a 6 to 7 foot fluorocarbon leader of 25-pound fluorocarbon leader. I use Seagar, but I'm going to stop using Seagar because it's just too expensive for how much line you get. I'm going to go with Ops and fluorocarbon. It's better bang for your buck, but I haven't fished it yet, so I'm not sure how I like it. I just know I like the price point compared to how much line you get on their spools. So I'm going to start fishing Ops and fluorocarbon compared to Seagar. Better bang for your buck. On top of that, on top of that fluorocarbon leader, I'm going to tie my small hook, and then I'll be good to go for those yellowtail. I'll pin on a 5 to 6 inch sardine, maybe a 4-inch sardine, depending on what we got, and just chuck that thing out and hope for it to get bit by a big yellow. So those are your 3 techniques. And later on in probably the next video, I'll cover the rod and reel recommendations. Or actually, let me think about it. I'm probably gonna just show you guys what combos I use for these yellowtail. Since I don't have them right now with me, I'll show that in the next video. I am gonna quickly just mention my recommended reels and rods that I like to fish for these yellowtail. So I'm a big fan of Phoenix rods. I'm a big fan of Shimano reels. I will fish nothing else but those 2 brands for rods and reels. You will not get me to fish a Daiwa, a Penn, or even like an Akuma. The only Akuma I will fish is the Akuma Komodo SS, but that's a whole different story. The reason why I fish these 2 brands is because Shimano makes some amazing things, from bike parts to fishing reels, to some other stuff, but they make some really high quality stuff for a good price point. Like, some of their reels are really expensive, but it's because they're really high quality stuff. So I like fishing Shimano. I will always stick with Shimano. I will not change it up ever. For rods, Phoenix, the reason why I fish Phoenix is because you get a great bang for your buck. They're going to be on that lower price point in terms of rods. They still have some rods that are really expensive, but most of the rods are really affordable, anywhere from that $200 to $350 price point. A lot of guys fish Seeker and CalStar, those rods are great. Those brands are amazing. Don't get me wrong. It's just that their uh, price point is really, really expensive. And I'm not wanting to fish a $1,200 combo when I could easily fish a, let's call it an $800 combo or close to $1,000 combo. So I'd rather save money, buy a decent a price point rod that I know performs just as well as the higher end rods and reels and stuff. So that's just why I fish, why I specifically fish Phoenix and Shimano products, and also I stick with Izerline, I stick with my owners, I stick with my Shimano lures, um, and some other lures. I did forget to mention that another great surface iron that I really like to fish is the OCT 10. It's one cool tuna is what OCT stands for. Nowadays, guys are making these surface irons out of CNC aluminum. They're not going to be like these regular cast iron aluminum or cast iron. What I think they're cast iron surface irons where they just paint them on and paint chips off of them really easily. That's just one thing I really hate about those lures. These CNC aluminum jigs are really, really light, really, really strong, are all made pretty much the same. So you're not choosing that, having to constantly choose that right bait. They're going to be powder coated with their colors, and the color is going to be really hard to take off. When you're casting that jig all the time, that hook slapping that jig is going to chip off paint. And that's just what I hate. With these CNC aluminum powder coated baits, they're going to be really sturdy and have the paint last a lot longer. But they're all going to swim this same straight off the rack with these CNC aluminum jigs. There is Meekster irons. There's some other ones out there that make some CNC aluminum surface irons, but that's just what I found. They're going to be a little bit of a more expensive bait at $30 a lure compared to $14. I'd rather spend that $30 on that lure that lasts me over 2 years and looking the same after 2 years compared to $14 on a lure that is going to look completely different after probably a year. So I'd rather spend that extra $15 and have the jig look the same, look the same and swim the same after 2 years. So that's just one thing I forgot to mention. But moving on to the rods. When I fish my jig sticks, I fish my jig sticks nothing less and nothing more of 9 feet. If you're new to the jig stick stuff, I recommend starting off with an 8 foot. That's what all the guys recommend starting off. When I first got it, I started off with a 9 foot, and I don't regret it one bit. And I will always fish a 9 foot. I will never fish a 10 foot. I will never fish an 8 foot for jig sticks, specifically a 9 foot all the time. Phoenix makes their Axis deckhand style jig sticks, and when they say deckhand, it's because they don't have a reel seat on them. It's just straight cork or tuna cord straight to your rod. So you're going to have to get a reel clamp and put your reel on there and adjust it the way you like it. So they're Phoenix Axis deckhand rods. I'm just pulling it up right here. They got a Turk head on them with their tuna cord, and for their 9 foot, 20 to 50 pound, it's going to be $295. So that's a great price point right there. $300 for a rod compared to $500 or $600 for, let's say, Phoenix or CalStar. So that's why I'd rather choose this brand. And they also are really strong and sturdy and have a great warranty on them. So when I pick a jig stick, the one I have is a CalStar, but I got that rod for $300, pretty much the same as this Phoenix. But that's when I was first new to this whole jig stick type stuff. So I would choose their 9 foot, 20 to 50 pound rod, and probably pair that rod up with nothing more, nothing less of 40-pound mono. You could get away with 50-pound mono. That's what I would fish that rod with. And then their 9 foot, 30 to 80 pound, I would fish probably their probably fish 50-pound mono on that. They do make a 10 foot 15 to 40 and a 10 foot 30 to 60, but I'm not going to talk about that because that's not what I fish. I don't fish 10-foot rods. It's just too much and too long and too heavy to handle. So for these two rods, I would recommend the 20 to 50-pound 9-foot rod paired up with a Torium or Talica. Torium or Trinidad, my bad. I would fish the Torium 30 on this rod, spooled with 65 to 80-pound mono power, or 65-pound Power Pro braid, and then I would add enough room to do 100 yards of 40-pound mono on top. For the other rod, the 30 to 80, do a Torium 30 probably, or Trinidad 30 spooled up with 65 to, or probably 80-pound Power Pro on top of 100 yards of 50-pound mono. Those are your two jig sticks, all good, all set up, and fish that straight to your surface iron. Your next rod is going to be coming from their Black Diamond series rods. It's going to be a little bit more of an expensive rod. I'm not sure why. It's just probably the blank and how it's designed and their technology and whatnot. So they make a 8-foot, 8'6", 9-foot deckhand style rod. They're 8-foots. They come in 20 to 50, 25 to 60, and then that's it. I'm not going to talk about the 8-foots because that's just not what I fished, like I said before. But their 8'6" is a 20 to 50. That's another good option you could get away with if you're wanting to be in between that 8-foot and 9-foot mark. Their 9-foot rods come anywhere from 20 to 50 pound, 25 to 60 pound, and 30 to 80 pound class line ranges. Their 20 to 50 pound, I would spool that up. I would fish 40-pound mono through that, probably on a Torium or Trinidad 30, or even a 25, or even a 20 Trinidad or Torium. And then their 25 to 60-pound rod, I would fish your 50-pound mono, or 65-pound braid on top of 100 yards of 40-pound mono. They're 30 to 80, like I said before, for the Axis rods. Same thing, 80-pound braid with enough line to get 100 yards of your 50-pound mono straight to your surface iron jig. Next, for your stick baits, I am going to be fishing the let me think. I'm going to be fishing their M1 inshore rods, their casting rods. And their casting rods are going to be for their 9-foot class range. I could do an 8-foot too. I think it's a little bit too short for my likings and my personal preference. I'm going to fish their 9-foot 12 to 30 pound, and then their 9-foot 15 to 40 pound rod. Their 9-foot 12 to 30, I will pair that up with Tranks 400, spooled up with 40 or 50 pound Power Pro Max Quattro braid. On top of that, like I said, I'm probably just going to add a few feet of mono straight to my fluorocarbon leader or something, or maybe straight to my lure. And for that mono, I'm going to fish 30-pound mono. Nothing more, nothing less. It's going to be the perfect combo. Their other 9-foot rod, that's anywhere from 15 to 40 pounds for their class range. I'm going to be fishing another Tranks 400, spooled up with probably 50-pound Power Pro Max Quattro on top of a few feet of 30-pound mono, straight to my lure, or if I'm using it for fly line, do a fluorocarbon leader straight to my hook. That covers your stick baits. For your fly line, or actually, let's talk about your yo-yos. Yo-yo rods. Let me check. Okay. So I would go with a Phoenix Axis casting rod. For their casting rods, here they make some 7 foot twos. Their 7 foot twos come in 30 to 80 pound, 40 to 100 pound, 60 to 130 pound, and 80 to 200 pound. I Oh wait, actually hold on. I got that wrong. My bad. There's 7 foot two rods come anywhere from 20 to 40 pound, 25 to 60, 30 to 80, and obviously the other rods that I mentioned. So it covers a pretty large variety of line classes, but the two main rods I would recommend is their 20 to 40 and their 25 to 60 in the 7 foot two range. It's going to be both of them, one of them is going to be a medium heavy, a heavy, and a medium heavy, and a heavy. So it's going to be a stouter rod, a shorter rod. It's going to have less action, less bend on it, just because you're going to be winding that bait in so fast. I would pair that up with your Torium 30 or your Trinidad 30. Most likely your Trinidad, because they're a better reel for yo-yo applications, because they make a narrow spool Trinidad, which is going to be great for that yo-yo scenario. Spool that up with 65 to 80 pound Power Pro Max Quattro or regular Power Pro, whichever one you like, or even another braid. I personally like Power Pro, that's why I'm saying Power Pro, but you can choose whichever one you like. This one I would pair the 20 to 40, pair it up with a Trinidad, I believe it's their Trinidad 25 or 14, I'm not 100% sure, I'd have to look, or a Torium 30, depending on what you like. Spool it up with 65 pound braid on top of 50 yards of 40 pound mono, and then straight to your jig. Next, your 25 to 60 pound rod, I would pair that up with, like I said, one of the Trinidads, that's the narrow size, or Trinidad 30, along with the Torium 30, depending on what you want and what you like for this application. Spool it up with 80 pound braid on top of 50 yards of 50 pound mono straight to your yo-yo iron. Then you are covered for those 3 techniques. I'm not going to talk about rods for your fly line because there's just too many rods and this video is already long enough. I'm not going to drag it on. So those are your rod, reel, line, and lure recommendations for yellowtail. So I hope this really helps you guys. If you guys like this video, feel free to share this video, comment on this video, and also subscribe to my channel. It'll help out a lot, and I appreciate you guys for your time and effort to make this channel bigger. Thank you. Bye.